So hello everyone, welcome to Satsang. Let's make some silence first. Let go of everything. Whatever comes into your space of perception, deem it unimportant. So insignificant that there's no point in giving it any attention. So for those of you who don't know, we use WhatsApp as a means of communication. The number appears on the comments, and you can send your questions directly to me. So today I will talk about a common confusion that more or less almost seekers go through and stay sometimes for a long period of time. Sometimes they cannot get out from it. See, mimicking is a way of learning, a tool that is natural, inherent in humans, mimicking others' behaviors to look alike, to exemplify something that you appreciate. And this is behind almost all worldly investments. And it is quite common to see this also in spiritual grounds. So decoding and mimicking, two aspects of the same thing. The problem lies in this decoding, because it's very difficult to decode, even if it seems simple, because it's easy for you to get convinced of something. And by observing what is apparent, it doesn't mean that it is reflecting that which is at the source of it. So because of this idea in the beginning that spirituality is the answer that is missing in worldly life, and it is the magical ingredient that will bring happiness. Because of this idea, you tend to decode a lot of things in a very twisted manner. The quest for truth is about your relationship with the divine. Period. Other interactions are meaningless. Other interactions, they may only reveal where you're standing, nothing else. They are of no importance. The seeker of truth is not in the quest of acceptance, is not in the quest of being loved by the world. So he is not in the quest of being lovable. This is very confusing for many. It is a simple concept, but a fundamental one. The seeker of truth is not improving the image, the individual characteristics to become more lovable. Being more lovable by marrying is not a sign of spiritual evolution. There's abundant literature that says otherwise, because this mistaken idea is old. Not old, but old. So there's a lot of literature that suggests this. And it is easy to understand. Well, in any worldly undertaking, the best, as you become better at something, you get appreciation. So if you become better in spirituality, you'll get appreciation. That is, well, a logical. And if your quest is for that appreciation, well, then it is obvious. But the obvious is always relative. It's not a general obvious. It comes up as an elephant in the middle of the living room for the one who is observing. Relatively to his point of view. So the more free one becomes, more happy one will become, because he will be filled with ananda, and that will glow from within. Well, that may or may not be true. Everything is according to purpose. But by following this logic, well, if you start smiling more, being more lovable in a way that others can recognize, then you will be spiritually evolved. You'll be recognized as such. You'll be important. You'll be accepted. You'll become lovable. You're like a small puppy dog. Everybody tends to love him, to give him attention, because they are lovable. So it's with this idea, with these ideas, people go into spirituality and they start observing others and they start to mimic these behaviors, perfecting these behaviors. And this has nothing to do with spirituality, with the quest for freedom. It is more or less like, well, the journey is about undressing your clothes. And you're looking for new clothes to put on top of the old ones. So instead of emptying yourself from that which is not you, you are squeezing what is there, what appears to be you, and you are putting new things on top of it to make it look better, more lovable. And you're probably in spiritual practices, you're investing your time, you're studying, and you're doing all these things. And you're becoming more lovable. You're starting to master all these behaviors, language, and all of this. And you keep moving away and away and away from any real work. But you start to get recognized by others. appreciated. And especially in these environments, any slip that you might have will be pointed immediately. You'll be judged immediately. It's not tolerable, tolerated. And you'll rectify it because you don't want to lose that lovable status. And as time passes, it becomes first nature. At least in spiritual environments, of course. And then in this logic, as you are mastering these behaviors, you'll become better and better at it. And stories are abundant in this way of people going to spiritual meetings, and if they are observed before getting to that place of meeting, their faces are long, serious. And as they come close to the spiritual gathering, a smile fills their faces of happiness, profound happiness. Then they mingle and go back home into their misery. And through this logic, so much has been written about it that in these last decades, the smiling ones appeared. The gurus that reflected this vision, seekers like all of you, that got real better than you at it. They had perfected. And as you observe with these eyes, following this logic, of course, then it all makes sense. Understand that the quest for truth has nothing to do with becoming more lovable. It has nothing to do with acceptance from others, from being special towards others. Absolutely nothing to do. Sometimes, as your work intensifies, depending in which part of the process you are in at this moment, these random interactions with others can give you a feedback, more or less, not by their reactions, but by the way it flows from you, from the difficulties you used to observe and what it is now. It may give you a feedback depending on your level of clarity, but it has nothing to do with those interactions or with others. So there's this vision of the spiritualized person, which is a very loving person that loves everybody, judges no one. This may only be true because, well, that seeker of truth has no interest in others, so he is not wasting time with them. It's like looking at deities with their 4 or 6 arms, and you see that there's something at the extremity of each hand. But it's like looking at it and forgetting about what's in the extremity and just imagining that all those arms is just to wrap themselves around me and hold me tighter than ever. That the vision of the divine is that all-accepting presence that loves unconditionally. It's not about relationships. So if you go by that road, mimicking, you're just creating a new character. So there's the normal character, the one that you use, that person that you are when you're dealing with your parents, with your friends, not from the spiritual world, normal people, whatever that means, from your worldly relations, that which you've grown to be. That is the dream, as simple as it can be. And that spiritual character that you're creating, it becomes a dream inside of another dream. No roots, nothing. No work can happen there. If light, brightness, love starts coming out from you, it is by the freedom that comes from your lack of engaging with those behaviors, with that nature that appears, that is twisted. Because you have started to recognize these investments and you have started to cut them and you have intensified silence inside of you. Not because you were mimicking behaviors. So that metric of others can be of help if, for example, in that interaction, that specific interaction, an interaction that used to be difficult for you for whatever reason, improves, gets smoother, easier, less complex. Then you see, this is getting better. But just as that feedback, and you go back to silence, to intensify your silence. You don't stay there and enjoying that. For example. But you have to have your motivations checked. Creating this new character, spiritual character, is the worst thing that can happen to you. You lose track of yourself, you lose your work. It becomes just a waste of time. And you're creating more difficult objects, more difficult, how do you say this, obstacles for yourself. Because that thing will start to get ingrained and it will be very difficult to let go. And what happens is the famous shadows are pushed downwards more as you keep piling up these nice behaviors, apparent ones. And what is getting pushed downwards, blocked, will start coming in a twisted way, a more angry way. So all these pointers, they say nothing about someone's evolution. They may say about someone's capability of mimicking others' behaviors, but that doesn't qualify as spiritual evolution. And with that behavior, you're just fooling others, especially yourself, and wasting your precious time. And with that vision, you're interpreting spiritual teachings, decoding in your own way, and also sharing that which you have decoded. So instead of just eluding yourself, you're eluding others also. It has nothing to do with relationships, absolutely nothing. And this is very important. Silence is the lack of investment in all these structures that feed this character. Those structures that you can look and say, oh, they are good behavior patterns. And the ones that you look and you say, these are bad behavior patterns. They both feed the same. So, in the vision where if you have had a good life, if you were a good person, if you've done good, you'll go to heaven. And if you've done bad, you were a bad person, you go to hell. It doesn't matter if you're going to hell or you're going to heaven. It is the same illusion. You're still there as individual. So silence is the absence of investment in the individual needs, in the individual's purpose, in the individual life. Is picking all of that and surrendering it at the feet of God. And by the lack of that investment, these structures start to fade away. There will be observable characteristics, behaviors in that body-mind, apparent changes that can be observed. But what is the real value in that? Probably, like I said previously, depending on where you're standing, it may be important for you to see it, for you to feel that things are moving. But just that. No more time should be wasted with it. In the old days, when someone went to intense spiritual practices, they would seek a secluded place where they could be alone, so that they wouldn't mingle with others. And for example, if things start to heat up, your spiritual work starts to intensify, you may find yourself being more unreasonable, being more opposite from lovable, being more hateful, no, not hateful, hateable. I don't know, I'm not sure if this exists, but you're become more prone to being hated by others because your attitudes are just wild and crazy. Your temper goes off, and they will say, so, but is that a spiritual person? Shouldn't you be more lovable? But in the living process, this fluctuates a lot, because the process is not of mimicking, but of emptying all these structures. And it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And as you reach a level of stability, then you lose it again, and it goes deeper again, and more dark things emerge. Those who are really, 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 but really trying their level best to transcend their own shadows, they have difficulties in really looking at them. It's very hard. As hard as looking at the sun with naked eye. And those who got a certain level of maturity, they begin to be able to observe their own darkness, what they consider to be their own darkness. It's unescapable. And it's really hard to hold it, to hold that vision without deviating the looks. So what can we say about those that are just trying to mimic and bring this into themselves? They will not be able to observe it, much less to transcend it. Is acting a crime? Well, depends. If you're in Hollywood, it's good. Or in your case, maybe Bollywood. A seeker of truth is not about acting. It's about transparency, righteousness, to himself first. Because that acting is a kind of deception. And it is the biggest deception because you are deceiving yourself first. Others come next. And that will depend on what kind of importance is the part that you are playing towards others. But that is another subject. So these needs of being apart, belonging, this is all for the story's sake. The story of this individual dream. These are the forces, the binding forces that keep you distracted in a trance-like state. You're welcome. So you have to observe in whatever you're doing if it is tainted by these needs. Because if it is wasting time. You cannot do two things at the same time. And what's the point of it also? So whenever it is tainted by these needs, you have to cut the investment immediately. The best thing you have to work from is from that normal character, the one you grew up to believe you are, with no more fancy layers on top of it. The one that speaks to your parents, to your childhood friends, that is the most simple one. It is from there that the work begins. Whatever you put on top of that one, you're getting far and far away from any real spiritual work. And these ideas will be detrimental and will bring you a lot of pain. Because when the thing starts, really, you cannot hold those masks. They will fall down. And if you really believe them, you will suffer because you will not be lovable. Your reactions will be opposite from that. Sometimes, in the beginning, a lot of times. This is why it is advised to be more secluded, so that you don't create more confusion in another language, more karmas that you then have to deal with. So if you're alone and the monkeys are all jumping from their cages, but you're alone, not big of a harm will be done. But if you're with others, it is more difficult not to get into fights, to express this at a dual level. Not to create excuses, not to look at own shadows. And you walk into a path of falsehood. And this will be your guiding star. So masters, teachings, others. Everything follows the same lines. So if you're looking for green, but the actual color is yellow, you may pass through it and you won't see it. So you probably heard that each one brings something unique. So an original, they are synonymous. So trying to mimic others, will that bring that uniqueness? And to bring that uniqueness, does it mean that it will be your contribution to the world that which will make you special? No, that is the same line of reasoning that was previously. That everything in the end, it's about loving one another. It's about being filled with heart, with love and compassion towards others. Compassion, for example, is a transcendental phenomenon. No one is really compassionate. Compassion may flow through one's heart towards another one, but that's only about compassion and the one who is receiving it. If it is going through your heart, then you're blessed because you are touching that compassion, but it's not yours, and it doesn't come whenever you want it to come. You may mimic that in your relationships, but that does not, you cannot recreate that phenomenon, because compassion is a burst of love through your heart, a loving current that you have to act upon it. You cannot stop it. But it's not you. So you're just a witness in the middle that is blessed in touching it. So going through your level of noise to silence, that is the direction. From the level of complexity that you are, or appear to be, to simplicity. It's not about creating more complexity and more on top of and on top of. And this is so detrimental, like I explained previously, that you are interpreting what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, according to these misconceptions. So remember this. The quest for truth has nothing to do with others. It's not about becoming more lovable. It's not about being accepted. It's about a relationship, a surrender, a complete surrender to the divine. From the world point of view, from that point of view, towards that body-mind complex and other body-mind complexes, whatever that means, you don't want anything else from the world anymore. This should be clear for a seeker of truth. It doesn't matter if the wantings are there. You will assert this and you will do nothing to feed this anymore. Not enacting more investments of this nature, and rejecting the good fruits or bad fruits that come from previous actions, previous investments. And if by chance you can see that in these random interactions with others, that things are becoming more fluid, more easy, remember these words. Remember these previous needs that you had about being accepted, and don't fall into that temptation. You've seen it. Oh, it's getting better. Okay. But then let go. Leave it aside. Don't distract yourself anymore. Because Maya works like this. First, it keeps you entertained by depriving you of the things that you think are important. And as you start maturing, the next level, it will distract you by giving you those things that you thought were so important. Okay. So for today, that's all. Okay. There's some question, I think, so let's wait a little bit. So if you send your questions directly to that number that appears there, it's faster and more fluid. So for those who are listening and speak Portuguese, and sometimes have more difficulty with English, you can send your questions in Portuguese. I will translate it and answer it in the English satsang, of course. And if you don't really understand the answer, I will give it in Portuguese. No problem. But I will remind you again that I'm available for Portuguese satsang. So whenever there are questions in Portuguese that you prefer, I will give Portuguese satsang. Simple as that. So there was someone in a previous satsang suggesting that there should be translation available in the satsang for Portuguese speakers. Well, there's no need for that. You can ask your questions in Portuguese and I will make Portuguese, satsang in Portuguese. Simple. If you're not asking questions, I'll continue because English is a broader language, so more can understand it. It is simple, but I'm available for everyone, whatever that means. So, Ian, I don't know if that's the correct way to... So the $1 million question is this: who is the divine? Well, I don't know this was a $1 million question. I thought this was the only question. Well, if you don't know, what can I tell you? You see, the divine is that which a seeker of truth aspires to. is that the biggest longing in his heart, or probably the only one. Sometimes it is mistaken by other longings, but it's not, it's just that one. But if this question has anything to do with, well, I'm the only one who exists, well, then maybe this is confusing, because that kind of vision, it's only useful or proper, or, man, missing the word, when maturity is there, when the process is living. Before that, if the heart is not filled, overflowing with devotion, then these ideas are just something that kills the process and doesn't let it replying. Teve conversa aí? Está a dizer que respondendo. Ah, tá. Ok. Tá. Are you based in Brazil at the moment? At the moment. Yes, at the moment. Why do I always suffer? Well, suffering is possible only because of one's ideas about oneself and the world. It's a simple answer, but it's a really big answer. And this suffering is giving you an opportunity to question your own beliefs about yourself and about the world. One of the reasons there is suffering is because there is not happiness. And it is suffering because happiness is the longing from the heart. But it's not whatever happiness, it is a particular happiness. And that is the happiness which is called of self-realization or God realization. It is the same, doesn't matter. And this is what is behind individual life as you know it. And whatever investment there is in someone's life, it is happiness-based. But in the beginning, it comes through the idea that happiness is circumstantial, and that if you create the right circumstances, then you'll be happy. So as you entertain these ideas, whatever they are, that are deviating your attention from going back to the source, suffering will be there, giving you a feedback of the real value of your beliefs. Suffering is not something bad. It is the last blessing. The blessing that anyone, despite their level of confusion, can receive. And eventually, as it becomes intense, it will break your beliefs, no matter how strong they are. And as you start aligning yourself with the path of the seeker of truth in you, that which really aspires for happiness, real happiness, which is freedom, then suffering will still be there in a sense, because you have to let go of all that suffering, empty yourself from it, and you will experience it, but it will be different. It will not hurt you that much. But as misconception is there, suffering will be there, saving the day. Okay. So next satsang, Wednesday, 9 o'clock in the morning, Brazilian time, UTC -3. Till then, reflect, and if you deem so, do something with it. Watch. Mm. Mm-hmm.